I go to movies and I see people holding hands and sitting, or at restaurants when they're sitting with somebody else. And then I think about how there's one thing for which I'm so grateful that you don't need a partner. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about pleasure and masturbation. This is Artika, and today we're going to talk about masturbation, no-fap movement, pros, cons, and so much more in Allo, Ask the Sexpert, a space where we invite sexual health and wellness experts to talk about health, sex, wellness, and so much more, so that you can have better sex backed by science. Today's Sexpert is someone you've all seen and loved, so we had to have her back. Kanusha, who is a psychologist and a sexual wellness expert with Allo Health. Hi Kanusha, I love seeing you here. How are you doing?
Likewise. I think it's nice that every single time I come, we have something very interesting to talk about.
But I think I want to start by getting some comfort. Do you also feel like that when you go to movies?
We'll leave that for some other time, yes.
But yeah, absolutely. Coming back to the topic, today we're here to talk about solo pleasure, solo sex, or as we all know it, masturbation.
Yes.
So scientifically, what is masturbation?
So I'd maybe restrict it to, so generally, when people talk of masturbation, we think it's the stimulation of the genitals or the genital area.
Yeah.
But I think it can also extend to other erogenous areas around the body, right? Where it's basically stimulation of sexually sensitive areas, which gives you pleasure, sexual pleasure, very briefly put.
Wait, that word in itself was so sensual. I have to ask you to explain it. What are erogenous zones?
So an erogenous zone could be, there are different types of it, and it's very subjective, but it's basically an area in the body which, like I mentioned, is sexually sensitive. Mm-hmm. So a stimulation of that gives you some sort of a sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
So it can range from, the waist, neck, thighs, feet. Again, I think the list can go on, but what's important is that it's very subjective.
Yeah, this is reminding me of that Friends episode. I don't know if you've seen it, in which Monica counts 1 to 7.
Okay.
So I think those are the erogenous zones that
Probably.
she was counting.
I will definitely watch it now.
But yeah, coming back into talking about masturbation, I think, when we talk about partners, the conversation on sex comes up almost naturally. But I do want to talk a little bit about masturbation also being a valid form of pleasure. So what is your take on that?
It is definitely. And again, I think that, different ways that people find something sexually stimulating or arousing, right? It could range from physical touch, physical intimacy with, a partner, or it could be just masturbation. Mm-hmm. There are times that, you don't have a partner around, or for whatever reasons, that can be really helpful, right? Or sometimes, the kind of pleasure masturbation gives you is very different from, doing something with a partner.
Right.
So I think each to its own, but it's, something a lot of people really enjoy doing very often.
And just to your point, and because you mentioned partners, there's also something called mutual masturbation. Do you want to talk about that? How it's also a form that's used in sexual concern therapy, right?
Yes. So I think, again, it works both ways, right? Either, some of them prefer, the partner masturbating the other one.
Yeah.
They do the sexual, either way, right? Or it could be maybe just both people masturbating to something else, but just together. So again, that depends on what, you find sexually arousing or stimulating. Again, a very subjective thing. But a lot of times, I don't want to get into detail, but it's very helpful for a couple.
Absolutely. No, I think that's already very, very well put. And I want to, because of course, this is an area of expertise for you, pleasure and sexual wellness. I do want to touch up a little bit on what do you think are the pros of masturbating, if any?
Oh yes, a lot, I'm sure.
I have to say if any.
If of course, but there's a lot. So I think it releases sexual tension. It also helps with, fun fact maybe, but it helps with just increasing body, the image you have of your body. It helps
that was
you.
A fun fact.
It was a fun fact. It really does. For a lot of people, the whole self-esteem, self-image, it really goes up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Helps with confidence. You feel a lot more relaxed. You feel nice. Pleasure is always a good feeling. Mm-hmm. So I think these are some of the very commonly, common reasons as to why people masturbate. Yes.
I've also heard it relieves period cramps?
It does.
Really?
Thanks for adding that. Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's a cool thing we got to know
It's another
today.
fun fact.
Yeah.
So because, generally when you have period, it's associated with a lot of period cramps and the muscle feeling this, that. And pleasure in any form just makes you feel relaxed and nice. So this just sort of relaxes the whole cramps and gives it a break.
Yeah,
basically.
so we have pleasure plus reasons to try out masturbating.
Yes.
Of course, if you feel comfortable. That
of course,
is, right?
very subjective.
Yeah. I also have to, obviously, when there are pros, I have to ask, can it become an area of concern, or are there some cons to it that one should be mindful of?
There could be, and again, I think I'd start with the whole reference of how anything done in excess is harmful or could be problematic, right? So I think here there's something called compulsive masturbation. Again, very briefly put, it's when, a person finds the need to masturbate a lot more than required. It interferes with their overall functioning, it affects being able to focus on tasks, your concentration, might interfere with relationship dynamics, but just affects your overall productivity, which is why the compulsive masturbation.
Yeah, why the term compulsive kind of
Yeah, because it's more of like I have to do it more than like I want to do it, and a lot of times this is followed with just feelings of shame or guilt, or you just don't feel good about it, right? So this is typically something that happens. Yeah.
And is compulsive masturbation in itself a concern or a recognized condition?
It is. Well, it's not globally. It's not like a formally, recognized disorder, if I should say. But it's definitely something we treat as a condition.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of people come up with complaints of compulsive masturbation. So yes, an increase in that, I guess.
Right. I think and I'm sorry about that, I think I keep forgetting to mention that Kanusha is a sexual wellness therapist with Allo. And I won't take more time on that right now, but you can read about her on the Allo website. I'm so sorry, I just had to mention it for anybody who's listening in.
Yes.
But that is the end of my questions. But as you know, we do have a segment called Ask Your Question, where we ask your questions to the expert that we are chatting with on that day. If you've sent questions before, you know how the drill works. But in case you haven't sent a question till now, there is a link in the description and you can send in your questions anonymously. So today, Kanusha, are you ready?
Very much.
This is like our version of rapid fire.
Of course. Shoot away. Yes.
So the first question is, I haven't masturbated, but many of my friends have. Is something wrong with me?
Absolutely not. Like I've been saying repetitively, it's very subjective, right? And I always encourage for people to masturbate only because you want to, not because you have to, right?
And not because your friends have.
Definitely not. Definitely not, right? So each to their own. It's a very personal, private thing, and it's something you engage in only if you like to. So just stick to that, not because of anything else.
Sounds perfect.
Yes.
The next question is it considered cheating if I have a girlfriend, but I also like to masturbate?
It isn't. Again, like, I mentioned a while ago, right? I think there are sometimes you want to masturbate because, maybe your partner is somewhere else and you want to ease yourself of sexual tension. You just sort of, you feel good, you're in the mood, right? And masturbation sometimes gives a different kind of pleasure versus maybe intercourse or any kind of intimacy with your partner.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're cheating. It's, again, if you want to, you do it. Maybe make you feel better if you tell your partner that, hey, look, I do this, and you just
if that
be
makes
honest.
you feel better.
If it makes you feel better, but definitely not cheating.
Yeah, your partner could be in the same place and tired
of course,
to engage as well, right?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, that answers it so well. So, the next question we have is, my vagina hurts a little bit when I masturbate. Is that a concern or is that something that happens?
Again, there are, I think, quickly to sort of briefly put this, there could be multiple factors. I think a very commonly faced one is either you're masturbating too aggressively, it's very rough, or maybe using something which is, not very comforting, right? Or it could be having an infection, an irritation, or, a couple of reasons. So I think it's important to take it slow, easy, nothing pressured, always feel comfortable. And if you feel that an issue is still persisting, then definitely visit a doctor because, as I said, it could be just another issue being faced. Yeah.
Right. And that is the end of the segment as well.
Okay.
I think that was, you can breathe.
I can, yes. Finally.
No, but I think that was such a quick, fun, but insightful chat about masturbation. Do you have any thoughts?
Nothing as of now. I think it's, I love, first of all, that you're doing this, and it's so important for people to be aware of things, right? We're just often hesitant because of judgment and, maybe what's right or wrong. So I think talks like this really encourages for people to be aware and also feel free to, address possible queries that they have. So thank you, actually.
No, thank you so much for saying that. So this is the end of our time today, but we promise you we'll have Kanusha back again very soon. Until then, this is us signing off. We'll see you soon with another expert, another episode. Take care.
As a sexpert.